So yeah, at uni, I I've never openly. So I took down any post on Instagram that I had that told anyone that I was a magician. I archived all of them, and I went into uni as just a guy. No one did. But then over the sort of past few months, there's been like someone brought a deck of cards into uni one day to do a project with. Well, we all genuinely, I did not bring this up, but someone went, "Oh, let me try and do a magic trick," and my ears, I was like, "Oh, let's see," and it was like take your average Joe and try and do a card trick. It's more sort of like look at the bottom card, a bad key card, and then try and do it. So we went around, and then eventually came around to me, and I was like, "Oh, I'll give this a go." Reach in and take one. And I went straight into, and then again, I just did wrong card, right card, but played it out like it. So, I mean, look, it's probably it wasn't the ace, was it? No, okay. But if we could make that change, though, that'd be pretty cool, right? Let's go, yeah. And then let's have a look. And yeah, I think there was a surprise factor to it. So only a few people know, and a couple of lecturers. But I kept that under wraps, more so for my own enjoyment.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Desert Island Tricks. We've got another person waiting in the wings. Now, we've been doing this for a while. We have lots of these edited together already. And it's only just now that I realise I do this little introduction, but I put everyone's name on the actual title. So you already know who this guest is. So there's no point in teasing who this person is. But I think it's going to be a really interesting one. Number one, because this is the youngest guest that we've had so far. This person is only 18. So it's going to be really interesting to find out what sort of younger people are going for, as well as sort of the older gigging magicians. But it's also really nice because this person is incredibly, incredibly talented for their age. In fact, it's very rare to see a young person walk into the magic circle and everyone want to either talk to them or to find out what they're doing or to just have a chat, really. It's really nice to see. He even worked for Alakazam at one point. He was a work experience person, which was great, and it was great having him in there. I know that you guys are going to love this episode, and he's such a lovely person. If you ever get the chance to meet him, please go and have a chat with him and get him to show you some of his card moves, because he is absolutely a world-leading magician at cards at the moment. I find very few people quite as good as Jake is. So today's guest is Jake Allen. Hey, Jake.
That was the nicest intro I think I've ever had, ever. So thank you for that.
So how did you find putting your list together? Did you find it? Because I have a guess about what every guest's going to do. And I know you-ish. At one point, you were quite good with your Rubik's Cube magic, but gave that up for ace cutting. So we've seen some of your stuff. I reckon the majority of your stuff's going to be card.
Mm-hmm.
And I reckon quite a few bits are going to be from books.
Okay.
That's my prediction. I have been wrong a few times.
You have. Okay.
I have been wrong a few times, but that's my guess for you today.
Okay.
So let's go to your desert island. Oh, before we carry on, I didn't do my little preamble. So the concept of the podcast is Jake is going to be whisked away to a desert island. When he's on his desert island, he's only allowed to take 8 tricks, 1 book, and 1 non-magic item that he uses for magic. Particulars, things like the square footage, if there's a shed, if there's a crab, whatever. I don't mind any of that. That's all in Jake's imagination. All I care about is the list of tricks that he's taking. Basically the ultimate list of tricks for him. So, Jake, let's take you away to your desert island. What's in your first position?
So I've put as sort of my best trick, and that is wrong card, right card. Now I don't know the first place this was published, but the idea of just having a card, it not being their card, and it changing to their card, to me, number one spot. That's like I do it the most, do it all the time. That's got to be my number one sort of thing.
Okay, so which version would you use? Do you have like a favorite version from a book or a place, or?
Not really. Not really. There's no sort of set script or exact like straight up what's the word? Like formulaic method I use each time. It's normally depending on what's been said in conversation, that will influence what I say, that will influence the timing and the beats of the entire thing. So there's not really a specific version. Just sort of your standard wrong card, right card with whatever jazz goes around that.
Do you play like Magician in Trouble then?
Um, Kind of. Like it's sort of it's not a full acting, oh no, I've got it wrong, but I will take one out from the middle and be like, now, look, it'd be good if this was your card, right? I turn it over, it's not theirs, and they go, oh, okay. And there's sort of a hesitation normally. They don't think you've really got it wrong. They know something else is going to happen, but it's not, you're not fully acting oh no, damn it, I've messed it up. I need to start again. And then it comes back. Um, is sort of the way I normally frame it.
Nice. Okay, that's a really interesting one. I don't think to date we've had that one. So that's a really interesting one. So what would you put in your second position?
The second one I put is Eddie Fector's Be Honest, What Is It? More recently known as Two God Monty, that Blaine did on his special, which is in a book called The Magic of Eddie Fector, which was published in 1993. And that is a trick I do all the time because I just really like the structure and the beats of it. It gives you enough time to sort of set something up that is, at the end of the day, still a transformation, similar to wrong card, right card, but it feels like a much bigger thing and you can get more people in, you can play it much bigger. And I use that all the time.
Why that particular version? Because there's quite a few versions of
There are. And
Two God Monty.
I do chop and change between that version and a couple of other versions, but it's without going into too much sort of detail, I don't know, I don't actually know why why those versions stand out to me. There's nothing in particular, there's no like unique method or anything that's making it stand out. It's just as an effect, the whole routine I think flows really nicely, and no matter what situation, you can get that effect to work, which is why I think it's so strong. You also get the double beats of both cards changing. I like how, depending on the environment, I'll have one card change and then the other card change, or if I want to have it like super punchy, I get them both to change at the same time. So you get to sort of play about with the effect quite a bit without having to change any method or anything.
Nice. It is really one of the strongest tricks I think you can do impromptu with a normal deck of cards. I know lots of performers use that as like an opening piece. Great choice. Let's go to number 3. What's in your third position?
Is an effect called Paper Switch by a guy called Ben O. It comes from a little booklet he put out a while ago, and it's again another transformation. I mean, I've basically named the top 3 effects of kind of the same effect, but different presentations. And there's something about it's partly there because I really enjoy performing it. So there's like a little not like guilty bit of me. There's like a little bit of me. I just love performing it. I love how it all works and how it's all put together. So I really enjoy performing it. So I probably perform it more for me than I do for them, which isn't probably the best way to go about performing. But because I enjoy performing that, I had to put it at number 3. And yeah, and it's just sort of something. Again, I can do it close up, but then also on stage or to a massive group of people and stuff. So I think all of these effects I've tried to go for sort of super versatile.
Okay, that's not one that I'm familiar with. So could you talk us through the actual effect?
So I would take, before we start, I would take the ace of spades or a card like that, or easier to remember card, pop that card in my back pocket, and then they take out any card that they like, normally a contrasting card. I normally get them to take out like a red 10 or something, and they then hold it sandwiched in between their hands. And then you imagine taking the ace out of your pocket. So you take out an invisible card. Just imagine it. You pretend it's in their hand, and you pretend you've swapped the cards over. And then when they open their hand, they're now holding onto your ace. And when you go into your pocket, you're now holding onto their 10. And there's just something. It's so clean. That's how clean it is.
So
it's just
it's
a
like two card
transposition.
Monty, but from the pocket almost,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's like yeah.
What book was that published in? Do you remember?
It's in a little booklet called Switch. I couldn't tell you the year it came out though.
That's all right. I'm sure everyone will either, if they have it, they'll dig it out, and if not, I'm sure they'll try and track down a copy if they can. But great, that's really interesting. That's a nice one that I can put on my list to explore as well. It sounds really cool. What is in your fourth position? So this is your halfway point now. What's in your fourth
halfway
position?
point. My halfway point is, believe it or not a card trick. It's a coin trick. I don't do much coins, but it's primary movement, which again by Benno, and it's a coin goes in one hand. You close your hand around the coin. They hold your wrist. You hold your other hand flat out. They hold that wrist, and then you, within a second, boom, the coin jumps across. It's now gone from your left hand, appears in your right hand whilst they're holding your wrists. And it's pretty much the only coin trick I do. I don't normally walk around with any coins. I don't normally have any coins, but it's, in fact, once I was on a school trip recently and we were outside sort of like a bar, and one of my lecturers was like, "Oh, you've mentioned you done magic. Can you show me something?" And he had a ring, and I didn't have any cards on me because we were just like going out. So I said, "Can I borrow your ring?" And I did the exact same effect with his ring. And then that was it, because you didn't need to do any more magic after that. I've borrowed his ring and literally made it disappear from one hand, appear in the other whilst he's holding my wrists. It's like, there's just nothing else to do. It's a really good sort of full stop. Yeah, so that was my number 4.
Great choice. I think that's probably one of Ben's best known tricks of recent times, because, I mean, I've seen lots of people perform it, but what I think's lovely about that trick is it's almost like you set things up and it feels a bit ambiguous and people aren't really sure what's about to happen. But then there's this second in which you make a gesture or make a movement, and it sort of closes the loop in the spectator's brain. There's a great trick by Max Maven as well. Please forgive me, I can't remember the name of it. But he holds up a deck of cards and he gets them to break the deck at a point. Look at that card. And he hands them the card. But the whole time he begins with the trick behind his back. It's something Nightmare, I think.
Either.
I can't remember.
I know the one you're talking about, though.
But everyone at home will be shouting at their radio or whatever they're listening. Radio? How old am I? Their car or whatever they're listening to this podcast on. But that structure of him putting his hand behind his back feels really ambiguous, and it feels really strange. And he sort of justifies that in the presentation. And then at the end, that comes full circle and it makes sense. And I think that's what primary movement does as well. It sets up this sort of strange situation, and then the second that he closes his hand and open the other one, you don't need to say anything.
You do. I normally do it in almost silence, and you just sort of set it up. And I really like the change in pace of it. It starts off so slow. You sort of hear, like, you sort of gesture all quite, not like actively slow, but it feels like a build up. And then the instant the thing happens, it's like a wake up, sort of take it by surprise.
And it's rare for a coin trick as well to play that big.
To have that sort of structure or build up.
The fact that you can have one person either side of you holding both of your wrists means it would be great for parlour. Probably really good for stage as well. I think you probably get away with it. But in terms of grabbing a group of people at an event or in a restaurant or a bar, if you ever want to do a really big performance but just using something really small, I feel like it's a perfect effect for those situations. And I think it's well within reach of everyone. It's not that difficult to do because of the way it's been structured.
Hello guys, I'm here to talk to you about Alakazam Unlimited. This is the best streaming platform in the world, I'm telling you now. With Alakazam Unlimited, you get access to over 150 magic routines. This is video performances and explanations. We have card magic, coin magic, kids magic, rope magic, mentalism, stage, parlor, impromptu. We've got you covered. All of this for the low price of just £4.99 a month, and you can cancel at any time. Perfect if you've got commitment issues. Yes, I'm talking to you. Guys, you are going to absolutely love it. If you haven't joined the platform already, what the heck are you doing? Alakazam Unlimited is a streaming platform that you need to be a part of. Not only that, there is also exclusive content only available on the platform. Check it out now, alakazam.co.uk. Cheers.
Great choice. So that brings us over your halfway point.
Over halfway.
And we're on number 5. What's in your 5th position?
Now, this second half of the list, I think affects, again, that I enjoy performing. So if I was on this island, I did want these because I really enjoy doing them. So that explains 5 being ace cutting, which I know to so many people can just look really boring and look like just trying to show off and stuff. But the reason it's there is because I think the thousands of different ways that you can go about controlling a stock or a packet, or then finding a card or producing it, or however, because it's so modular, I enjoy the spontaneity and the making all the choices in the moment as you're trying to find a card. So I really enjoy performing it. And it always looks a little bit funny watching an 18-year-old find aces from a deck like they have been playing poker for a decade or something.
I think there's a really interesting thing about ace cutting, because there's 2 approaches that you can go with ace cutting, right? So you can either do it legitimately, so you can learn those skills, genuinely learn to control the cards to certain positions, and then bottom deal or second deal. I was about to call it a double deal then. Second deal or bottom deal. So you can do all of these techniques, or there are ways that you can flat out fake it and make it look like you're a card shark. And that's really interesting because technically ace cutting, controversially, my card friends that are listening to this, isn't magic. Okay?
No.
It's a skill-based performance, the same as maybe a memory demonstration if it was done for real. So yeah, so I'm guessing you went down the skill road, knowing you.
Well, yeah, but I think I've played about with all of them. I say all of them. That's probably a stretch. I've played about with a lot of them, and I've hit that same paradox of knowing that, okay, well, technically it's not magic, and I've entered magic competitions trying to do ace cutting. So I've always tried to make sure I could find a way to make it somehow still feel like magic, or have one of the productions is a magical way, or it appears somewhere, as opposed to it all being purely skill or looking like skill. But it's one of the books talk about later. I've got a runner-up for a favorite book, which will explain the ace cutting, if that makes sense, into sort of the skill or like practice approach that I took with it.
So do you have a favorite version of ace cutting, or do you have a couple of versions that you prefer?
There's no, so I don't have a structure of, like, every time I do ace cutting, I do it a different way, and I don't actively make that decision. It's as I'm shuffling, I might accidentally chuck an extra card on top, which means now I need to do an extra move to get rid of it. Or if I feel like, you know what, I want to, in the split, I'll be like, okay, I want to produce the next ace from the bottom. So I will move one ace from the top to the bottom in a shuffle or a couple of cuts, and then that's the production. So instead of knowing 1 or 2 routines, I think from certain books that will get mentioned later, I've learned so many different moves and ways of producing cards that I can just fit it together sort of as and how I like. It also means that if they're like, oh, can I shuffle the deck? I've got loads of outs and ways that I know that can take the deck, do X, Y, Z, and then carry on with the routine.
Almost like, so jazz ace cutting almost.
Yeah, I think jazz ace cutting is a great way of describing it.
Okay, that's really interesting. That's cool. And whilst ace cutting may not be my preference, I still really enjoy watching it because I actually quite enjoy knowing the skill is going on, and I almost like being fooled by the skill a lot of the time.
It's also something that when I've performed in like close-up style shows, it's I walk out there being this sort of really young looking kid. And that wasn't not in a flexy way, but anyone that knows me knows I do have a bit of a baby face. And it's walking out there. I love the paradox of going, okay, guys, I want to show you something that I've been practicing over lockdown. It's gambling demonstrations. And I find that sort of paradox quite funny. And then initially it's okay, what all right, it's okay. This kid is going to try and do some card cheating, and then to sort of go into something and actually try and find, or say actually, make it look like actually finding four aces. I find quite an interesting way of structuring a set, which I quite like.
Yeah, people underestimate you just because of your age and the way you look. Yeah, it's great. It means that you could probably be a really good actual con person as well. I should probably not give you ideas. So that brings us on to your sixth position. What's in your sixth place?
A trick that I thought would have been mentioned a lot more, or a version of it I thought would be mentioned a lot more. It's a version of Triumph. I love Triumph. This one I've put is Assy Wins Not So Straight Triumph, which is a take on John Bannon's Play It Straight Triumph, I believe. Both versions are great. In fact, all versions of Triumph I love. But this version in particular, there is that, and probably it's the part of me that likes the gambling card magic stuff, of producing. So for those that don't know, it's you shuffle a deck, you get a card selected, or two cards selected, sorry. You get a deck shuffled face up and face down, and then you shuffle it, mix it up, and then as you spread through, you show that all of the face-up cards are like ace to king of hearts in order, but there's one card missing, and it's a six of hearts, whatever, and they then chose the six of hearts, which they then look at the time, and then it matches, and then you square them up again, and then you move on to the next card, which is the eight of clubs, for example, and then as you spread through again, you now go through, and the clubs have all now changed, and you're looking at the clubs all face up with one card missing. And again, I think I enjoy performing that because I like what's going on behind the scenes. So I think that's why I put it at 6.
Great choice. I mean, Bannon's Play It Straight Triumph is phenomenal.
Already is it's
just great. And the fact that Assy's managed to find a way to add that extra layer.
Mm-hmm.
But what I think is really nice about it is it feels like the layer should be there. It doesn't feel like it's just been shoehorned on. It sort of makes sense. It adds an extra moment, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. It's not and this and this. Instead, it feels like you finish the first bit, but wait, we have one more card. Okay, well, there's only one way we can then resolve this. Boom, you spread. They have now changed. It doesn't feel like it's got that nice punch at the end of it.
Is that in repertoire?
It is in repertoire. But I think there's also a couple of downloads or something out on his website.
Great choice. And Triumph is an amazing trick that everyone should be doing a version of, really, because it just makes so much sense. And if you haven't seen John Bannon's Play It Straight Triumph as well, really recommend checking that out because it's just phenomenal. I remember seeing that when I was quite young, and it blew my brain out. And then when you find out how it works, it's just as clever and concise, and it just works so well. So that brings us on to your last two tricks. What is in your 7th position?
An effect that I don't actually perform. As in, if I'm out, it's not something I perform, but I have performed it in like shows or sets or acts, and that is Guy Hollingworth's Waving the Aces. Now, I'm not much a fan of twisting the I don't perform any twisting the aces or anything like that. I don't really perform any packet tricks. But I don't perform any packet tricks. But there's something about the structure and partly the method, but just the visual nature of a card trick that's done at sort of chest height. There's something about that which I find really interesting. um, which is why I gave it a spot. Because I think that if I was stuck on that, I think I'd find myself on that island, maybe using like a shattered bottle as like a mirror, just watching myself do it over and over again and just being perfectly happy with it. Wouldn't need to perform to anyone, just watching myself do it. There's also that the core of that effect, method wise, can be used in so many other effects for making cards appear or vanish. And so it's the effect itself is so diverse and can be used in so many different ways that I feel like it's a solid one to have there.
It's interesting as well because normally twisting the aces is not necessarily a visual effect. So the fact that there's this visual turnover, and I would say it looks like it's a gimmicked trick. It really does look like it's a gimmick trick. But the fact that you can see it visually, I mean, there have been other visual twisting the ace sort of effects, but I don't think that they come quite as visual as that version.
No.
So I think, again, that's a really, really good choice. That's in his book as well, isn't it?
Yes, Drawing Room Deceptions.
Drawing Room Deceptions. So,
almost
again,
everything in that book I could have used for this list.
Yeah, well, we mentioned a trick before we started talking, didn't we? So, yeah, it's a really, really good choice. Be interested to see what your book is now. So that brings us on to your final position. What's in your 8th position?
This is a trick that I would take to a desert island so that I could practice it. And it's David Williamson's famous 3-card trick, which I've seen him perform a number of times, and every time it gets better. But I feel like it's it's almost like an effect that only he can do, as in, like, when he does it, it just looks so perfect that I would, if I just had the time to sit there and just practice this over and over again and get that down, get the beats of time in, and just make it feel like me, I think that would be a really sort of fun thing to do.
Yeah, great choice. He is such a character, though, Dave Williamson. And I think that's what he brings, so much of himself and his own personality to each trick. It's almost like imagining, I don't know, Led Zeppelin singing Adele's song. It just it's really difficult to see someone else do that when it's done so well. So I get what you mean by watching him and thinking, how could someone do that better?
It's so linked to his personality, especially like, I'm not like I say like a serious card guy comes across the wrong way, but it's like I'm not anywhere near as lively, energetic, funny, bouncy as Williamson. So to try and do that effect seems strange. But I felt like it deserved a spot to sort of have its place to shine.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a really good trick, and I'm not sure if it's one that we'll have often, but I'm sure it's certainly one that people will know of.
100%.
Now, you haven't given any honourable mentions.
I would say a lot of Guy Hollingworth's Drawing Room Deceptions. So sort of any of the effects in there, in particular the gambling demonstration, I think that's got to have a spot. And there's also, I always butcher the name of it, but I think it's Cassandra's Quarry, something like that, which is right at the back, which I love. So I think those three, I'll take them, all three of my honourable mentions will be from Drawing Room Deceptions. I think those are what I'm going to go with.
It means that Drawing Room Deceptions can't be your book then.
Of course not. It's one of my favourite books in general, but it is not the one that I've gone for.
Great.
That'd be too easy.
So let's go on to it then. What is the book that you've... Now, for those that can't see, Jake has got quite a big library of books again behind him, all colour-coded, which apparently is a sign of a psychopath. I don't know that that's true. But, Jake, what did you go for your book? I'm guessing this was pretty hard.
This was almost impossible. Like, I didn't know how I was going to do this one. But it's a book that nothing I've mentioned effect-wise, none of the effects were in this book, but it's Totally Out of Control by Chris Kenner. For a number of reasons. when I first got the book, as in I think for me there's like sort of slight sentimental value to it, as in it was one of the first books I ever got when I went to International Magic Shop. I saw it because I'd heard of Chris Kenner, so I was like, well, actually, I asked it for Christmas, um, quite a few years ago, and I read it, and initially I was like just really confused because for those of you that don't know, halfway through the book you have to flip the book upside down, but then like half of it's written in almost like a comic book style way, and then it wanted to like cut out parts of the book to make like a door handle. Like it's a wild book itself before we even get to any of the effects. Um, but as in, I just and Jamie's now holding his copy up right now. It's I just enjoy reading the books because it's such a fun book to read. Um, which is why I put that at spot number one because I'd happily reread that over and over again. There's also the effects in there. There's it's got Chris Kenner's original Fleethry or Three Fly, I should say. But there's also stuff like a cigar routine with like wooden cigars, I think. And I'd never normally do that. But again, stuck on a desert island, find a tree, chop it down, make some wooden cigars. We'd practice that. I think it'd be a fun book to have on a desert island.
It's certainly quirky, isn't it? Even flicking
It's
through
really
it now,
quirky.
I'm just
All the
remembering.
illustrations are strange. It's also got like riddles in it of like or like guess the magician. It gives you like a clue and then you've got to figure out who you think it is. It's almost like a game reading it.
It is. It's a very quirky. It's almost designed like an old magazine, like an old school magazine. But yeah, I think you're right. I remember. I mean, so this copy was a second-hand copy, but years ago when I was younger, I actually owned another copy as well. And I remember the first time going through it, being like, "What on earth is this flipping the book all about?"
Yeah.
It was quite disorientating at first. But there were two books when I was growing up that I enjoyed. This was one of them, and Lifesavers was another one.
Oh,
Which
another
were
great
both
that
excellent.
I almost put that in as an honorable mention.
Yeah, Lifesavers is another one, but that was also both of them were super quirky. So I
Yeah.
always remember my favorite trick from Lifesavers was the one with the ticket. So I think it's a cinema ticket, and you punch a hole in one, and then you punch a hole in the other one. You pull off the hole and chuck it onto the other ticket. I know that we have loads of moving hole tricks now, but back when that book first came about, there wasn't a huge amount of them. And not using that method, the method is so clever for it, like noticing something about an everyday item that allows us to do it. Both of them are just super quirky, super interesting books, I think. Do you have a favourite trick from Totally Out of Control?
Missing Link is the rubber band one, I think, which is honestly it's the best linking rubber band out there. Like, there's no linking rubber band to me that looks as clean as that. Hellbound, Three Fry, actually, Perversion, 4 for 4, Intensity, Paint by Numbers, and SW Elevator. And there's a control in one of the effects, which I really like. But I don't know the name of the effect. But yes, I've got a list of effects from books that I quite like.
What's your favourite one trick? He just lists every single trick in the book. It's great.
They're not actually, they're the highlights from all the tricks.
Yeah.
In fact, some of them are moves, but that's what I go with.
Nice. So what would your book honourable mentions be?
So I think for obvious reasons, I went with the 40 books, Gambling Sleight of Hand, because I have to. That's like the wealth of knowledge and information in those books that you can sit there for eternity on the island and be practicing a new bottom deal, a new slug control, a million different moves. So they took them like the second honorable mention. And then the last book I would like to give an honorable mention to would be Darkest Corners by Ben Hart.
That's an interesting one. I would never have put that in your bracket.
No, it looks like I don't perform anything from it, but again, I think it's just as quirky as Totally Out of Control and Lifesavers, as in just the methods, some of those effects in there are so out there that I would never try on a day-to-day basis. But when I read the book, I really enjoyed the book, reading the sort of effects. And I just think that, again, on a desert island, that would be one of them that I'd want to have with me.
I
And it looks
love
quite nice.
I love from that the matchstick one in the darkness. I
Mhm.
love the
Yeah.
idea of turning the lights out and performing this trick in pure darkness in a theater.
Mhm.
And my other favorite one was the Venus flytrap. I
Yeah.
think like how bizarre, but one day in my life before I die, I'm going to be in the right
Yeah.
situation for
But
that
that will
trick to
work.
happen. And I only want to do it once in my lifetime in the right place at the right time. Um, Another really quirky book is Nick DeFat's Offbeat.
Yeah. Offbeat. We were talking about that a second ago
Mm,
or before.
yeah.
Yeah. Everything he does is amazing. But again, it's so intrinsically linked to him as a person in the same way the famous three card trick is linked to Williamson. It's you read it almost same with Ben Hartsock. You read it to learn about the effect, not necessarily to perform the effect. If that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the DeFat book as well, what he's really good at is twisting the end of a plot so that
Mhm.
we think we know where it's going. So,
Yeah.
I mean, the audience think they know where it's going and it works on
Mhm.
an audience, but it also works on the magician. So
Yeah.
he's great at taking a plot and going, well, what if instead of doing this, which everyone's expecting to happen in terms of magicians knowing what's going to happen, why don't we do this? And I'm sure, isn't there there's one with a balloon animal
Yeah.
and something ends up in the balloon animal. And I remember reading that and going, that's what an excellent way to end that routine. What a
Mhm.
clever idea. So yeah, it's interesting listening to your list though and knowing about you. The fact that you're quite, I mean, Jake earlier on said he's not a hardcore card guy. You are. You are pretty heavy into your cards. The sleight of hand that you do is phenomenal. I mean, I'm not really. I believe that no matter what age you are, you have the capability to be as skillful as anyone else. Your age shouldn't define how skillful you are, and you are a prime example of that. So, most people would say for your age, it's incredible. But even if you were 3 times your age, you're still incredible at what you're doing. But now we know that you're that good at cards and you're so linked to cards and you practice cards the most, but all of your book choices and sort of the things that you've chosen are all really out there and quirky.
Mhm. It's because I think that now I think I spent so long I don't know practicing a bottom deal that I now much more enjoy practicing fun. It's not that bottom deal's not fun. To me it's fun, but as in I'm enjoying looking at the more quirkier, more out there stuff that's still normally linked to card magic, but just in a different way, in a more unique, as in I'm having fun just experimenting and playing in the same way that when I was learning the bottom deal, it was experimenting and playing, but now it's sort of opening up my horizon to sort of new effects or technically old effects. In the same way, but I also made a pretty hard and fast rule a while ago of no gimmicks, just to myself. Like I spent a while practicing using different tricks and gimmicks and stuff, and eventually I sort of cancelled that out. Not in a not that I thought it wasn't like I think less of gimmicks, but as in I want to practice all the moves and try and do every move. I know that that's now probably not the best way to make friends, because you just sat in your room by yourself doing card tricks. But that's probably why I've gone for such a unique, well, not unique, but like quirky range of books. That if any of that waffle made any sense.
So does that mean that in the future we're going to have Cutting the Aces with a snowstorm ending from Jake Allen?
Who knows? Who knows what's already in the works? I can't make any promises, but I'm not denying it. Okay.
I already cannot wait to see that. So that takes us on to the curveball item. So this is your non-magic item that you couldn't live without.
And this took a while to come up with because I didn't want to go for anything sort of too obvious, and I went with my back right pocket. That
Okay.
is a non-magic item that I would always need because I use it all the time in Magic. Not for magic tricks, but as in I don't do a trick with my back pocket, but it's if I need to produce a card, as in if I'm doing a quick trick and it's, oh, think of a card. Oh, you know what? That's been in my pocket the whole time. Boom, there we go. Or if a trick goes wrong, it's, oh, well, of course I couldn't find your card because your card was never in the deck. You must have just imagined it's been in my pocket the whole time. There's every single, from even paper switch earlier, cards in the pocket. You could do a wrong card, right card, put a card in the pocket, take it out. It's now, so I think that all of them link in some way to my back pocket. And it has to be back right pocket. It doesn't have to be, but method wise, it's normally the back right pocket.
I think it's furthest from the performing area as well. Like an inside jacket pocket would work, but the back pocket feels like it's so your body is the barrier there, right? So
Yeah.
it feels less likely that somehow you've reached all the way behind yourself to put something into your pocket without anyone seeing, as opposed to your side where you could just drop it down. So I think the back pocket just feels more impossible.
There's also something like the deck is held in the left, for me, the left hand, which means I can move the deck really far away. So I can outstretch the deck with my arm or have them holding it. So that it couldn't be my back right pocket. It makes more sense for it to be in the back left if you're holding the deck in your left hand. Because somehow, I don't know, you could probably slip it in. But it means you've got to go with your empty hand into your pocket. I don't know, I think it's more, it feels, yeah, as you said, it feels more sort of free.
It's one that we haven't had yet as well, so that's it's
There
super
we go.
interesting. Although I'm looking forward to the trick with your pocket that you're going to invent one day.
Yeah, that's the final production. The card, the pocket just appears and stuck to my bum is the card.
Well, there's been a couple of. I'm sure there one with a T-shirt where there is a pocket, but when they look at it, it's printed, which is an interesting one.
Okay. I think there's been a couple of little pocket things out there.
Yeah, I'm sure there are. It would be strange if there aren't. Well, that's a really interesting choice of tricks. I think I was on the money. Nearly all of them were card tricks except for primary movement. And the majority of them are from books as well. I think it's a really, really interesting choice. And there's a couple there that people can go and look. I know I'm certainly going to look at Paper Switch. I think that sounds really interesting. And I'm sure other people will be digging those effects out as well. So what is the future? So you're only 18. What is the future for Jake Allen?
Jake Allen doesn't even know that. That's who knows at this point.
So you're doing some non-magic work for certain companies, aren't you?
Yeah. In fact, I'm quite into sort of my graphic design, my photography, my film. So outside of magic, there'll probably be. I say outside of magic, it's still somehow always linked into magic. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think my big thing for the rest of this year is to sort of just up the gigs, especially over the summer. I finish uni in 2 weeks. I've got the entire summer to go, to get some experience, do some shows, do some work. I think that's probably the big thing for me.
Really interesting as well. Jake decided or made a conscious choice not to tell people that he was a magician.
So yeah, at uni, I've never openly. So I took down any post on Instagram that I had that told anyone that I was a magician. I archived all of them, and I went into uni as just a guy. No one did. But then over the sort of past few months, there's been like someone brought a deck of cards into uni one day to do a project with. Well, we all genuinely, I did not bring this up, but someone went, oh, let me try and do a magic trick. And my ears, I was like, oh, let's see. And it was like, take your average Joe and try and do a card trick. It's more sort of like look at the bottom card, a bad key card, and then try and do it. So we went around, and then eventually came around to me, and I was like, I'll give this a go. Reach in and take one. And I went straight into, and then again, I just did wrong card, right card, but played it out like it. So, I mean, look, it wasn't the ace, was it? No, okay. But if we could make that change, though, that'd be pretty cool, right? They'd go, yeah. And then it was have a look. And yeah, I think there was a surprise factor to it. So only a few people know and a couple of lecturers. But I kept that under wraps, more so for my own enjoyment.
And
It's quite funny.
people have started to find out about it now, right? I mean,
Yeah,
we
so
bumped into someone on the train a few months ago,
yeah,
and that was quite interesting as well.
yeah. It's all starting to come out. I was never actively hiding it. I just wasn't openly telling people. And now some of them know that I'm a little bit of a magician.
That's great. So, if people want to find out more about you, Jake, where can they go?
Instagram is probably the best place. Jake Allen 52. A very creative name for magicians. Yeah, that's me. And if you really want to, there's a little photography account linked to my bio.
There you go. And there's some
but yeah.
really good pictures. He's a very talented
Oh.
photographer as well.
Thank you.
So do get there. Go check out Jake. Do you even have any magic videos on your social media?
No.
So you can't
No, I
even.
don't.
So
Yeah.
that means that you have to seek Jake out in person. If you're at the Circle, Jake's a regular at the Magic Circle, so check him out there.
Well,
But
there's a few things in the Magic Circle archive from
there you
past
go.
shows
Yeah.
from me. So you can see little Jake when he was about 14 in a magic competition.
Do go along, find out more about Jake, go to the Magic Circle archives. If you see him out and about, go say hello. He's a regular at the Magic Circle. He's a regular at the majority of large conventions as well. So go seek him out. Thank you again, Jake, for giving us your
No
list.
worries. Thank you for having me.
And we will hear from you all again on another episode of Desert Island Tricks. Goodbye.
Hi, Peter Nardi here, and I really hope you enjoyed that podcast. I just wanted to let you know that Alakazam have their own app. You can download it from the App Store or the Google Play Store. By downloading the app, it will make your shopping experience even slicker at Alakazam. You'll also get exclusive in-app offers and in-app live streams. So go download it now, and we'll see you on the next podcast.